I met Clayton at Tesla conference and got to meet him in person. I brought a physicist from Germany who is NMR physicist, so he studied nuclear mag resonance, and he took an interest in the simple structured water version off of discussions and development of the water plasma technology. So we showed up here and got to meet Clayton and decided to work together over that 5-6 year period. You know, evolutions of formality and other affiliate companies and such went on. And we've been working on all angles that involve water, which is everything: agriculture, human health, systems health in commercial plants and industry, to get the benefits from water, rejuvenating water in a simple way that is a subtle but wholesale thing and principle that goes on the earth, and to get back in balance with everything. It's fairly obvious that there's a little bit of imbalance going on. That's how the journey began and continues, and we have quite a few projects that always involve this but are much broader. So there's not a single project or machine or system I hardly work on that doesn't have water involved in it, and the opportunity to apply this and see what kind of benefit, you know, it can have. Fundamentally, you know, the builder of life, and I used to tell people to step away from the chemistry view of water, of H2O, and say that H2O is what's birthed out of water. So water fundamentally is the birthplace for atoms. There is some scientific work that can be done to verify this, though it's more controversial than transmutation. 10 years ago, transmutation was an off-topic, except for certain areas, thing, and often denied in science, that things don't really transmutate in any simple way atomically, which is completely false in every way, shape, or form. That's easy to disprove with the science, the statement that does not occur. Manifestation, apparently out of nowhere, or cold room fusion, if you take the other view of water molecules coming together to make a lithium molecule or a helium molecule, and 3 of those to form a carbon, and the building blocks of life, the geometries that are noted in divine geometry, sacred geometry, which are becoming, you know, prominent. You know, in the Sedona region, you see the symbols everywhere: the flower of life, the Metatron's cube, and now expanding. Those ratios and those things are precisely what you would see if you take 6 H2s and put them together and have a charge bias. You get a carbon atom, which is, we're in a carbon life cycle here on Earth. So fundamentally, it's birthing every atom we have and all material structure out of it. At the same time, it can take that structure apart and reform it. So it goes both ways. And a lot of people like to talk about the life side of it, but water will tear things apart that are not conducive to the environment or in harmony with the environment. So it carries 2 distinct functions, and this is being studied now, you know, what these are, and it's a harmonic balancer in energy before it's H2O, or even a conglomerate structure of H2O that, you know, is a structured water or hexagonal water, whatever form. In cymatics, you can see that the hex structure, when you vibrate on water, put light on it, and put a light reactant in the water, it has a predominant hex structure as a snowflake, so it's no surprise. But the amount of forms and complexity that can occur is infinite. So there is no one structure that's right. There is other structures besides the hex form that can form. So it seems to be homologous to any shape you want to form, and hence back up all matter and all life is probably birthed out of the etherical energy, which we can understand as water and birthing everything. So in a way, we could make an analogy between water and ether, which is an old substance that's also been denied but should be looked at it, and we could maybe ask the question, what are the planets floating in? They don't really weigh anything when they're floating. They're buoyant. And what are they floating in? So out of space comes water, comes life. It connects, and the quantum physics runs into that road as well. All the orgone mechanics and the chi and whichever versions, I can't remember all of them anymore, though I've looked at them, they're all the same. And my simplicity in the story was we could really just call this water. And the harmonic representation of physical water happens to be hydrogen and oxygen, a 1:8, total of 9, ratio going on that's built off of into the H2O scenario. It's a container for life force energy, and the atoms hold a physical harmony with this vibrational region, especially the earth ground. Matter of fact, water is the earth ground, not the earth. In electrical engineering, which I do quite a bit of or am involved in projects, if you take a ground rod and stick it in dry ground, you have no ground. So you can get into 70% water on Earth. Let's just call it 2/3 for sake of simplicity, because a lot of nature works off 1/3, 2/3, the third principle. And a magnetic pulse from the sun, a solar flare that releases an EMP. And this is things we saw when we were working with electricity, magnetism, and water and vibrations that showed up recordable on vibrational scopes and Fourier transfers. That pulse is absorbed and stored by the water by each atom in the water spinning, and there is a communicative, non-spatial, non-distance, non-speed of light, solid condition. Quantum mechanics and string theory in its early forms talked about this. There's a number of ways to simply illustrate it, but the energy that is an over energy for solid matter and would be destructive for Earth is absorbed into speed spin, and the water, the pulse hits this side of the Earth, the water on the back side is already taking up shock because it's in connection by a solid piece of the universe. It's not time dependent or space dependent, and then you're really getting into multi-dimensional things and the more theoretical stuff. But I always use the example with people when we have this discussion. You take a theoretically 100% solid steel rod, and you can exceed the speed of light by moving that rod, because when you move one end, the other. But if you can only see this motion over here, the motion ends up over here too through the solid connection. So it's instantaneous across that rod. Now, without spatial dimensioning going on, overlapping and holographic, theories, that's not possible, but that's where those theories came from, to begin to explain these phenomena that are occasionally witnessed and in laboratories often, done, and as we get into the UFO phenomena, and that this is how you have to change the science and allow for modeling to prove this out, to be able to work with this stuff in a safe and a way that'll propagate and it's not weaponry or a disaster, because it's very powerful.